Sometimes it seems impossible that lighting technology could get any better for independent filmmakers because there've been some incredible options for small crews for a while now. But as a documentary cinematographer, my lighting requirements are a little bit different, and so for me, 2024 has brought around some of the biggest updates to my lighting package in years. So in this video, I'm gonna go through my kit piece by piece, talk about how and when I use each thing, and why I've made so many changes this year. And because of those changes, and because I live in a tiny apartment without much storage space, I'm giving away a full starter lighting package with 5 great lights that I'm just not using enough anymore to justify keeping around. So stick around for that if you want a chance to win. Alright, so it's been almost 2 years since I made one of these What's in My Lighting Bag videos, and that's really because not all that much had changed. But this year I made some big changes, mainly because I've been challenging myself as a cinematographer to get outside the doc world and experiment more with narrative and commercial projects. I'm definitely staying documentary first because that's what I like doing, that's where my passion is, but working with larger lighting setups and crafting more intentional frames has been really useful in developing my skills as an all-round DP, plus it's fun to try new things. But I learned pretty quickly that when you've got 7 lights going for a shot and they're all made by different manufacturers, it starts to get really hard to control, and then switching between all the different apps started to drive me a bit crazy. So I decided to move towards an almost all aperture setup, not quite, but almost all aperture for a few reasons, like build quality and reliability, but also in large part because of the app, Sidus Link. It's probably the best of all the lighting apps out there, and it makes it much easier if everything runs through one program like a poor man's DMX board. This isn't a sponsored video, just FYI, and while I did get some of this stuff for free thanks to the power of YouTube, I also bought a lot of it myself over the years because I do this as a full-time job. My first light ever was actually an aperture panel light, and over the last 10 years-ish, it's been crazy to watch that company grow from like the budget Amazon brand to one of the most premium companies out there for indie productions. In a weird way, it sort of feels like I came up with them at the same time by watching that dude Ted be super charming at what feels like every gear convention in the universe. I don't know, does anyone else ever feel like certain brands have tracked their career or progress, or is that just me being a weird fanboy?
You're really weird.
Alright, so I think it makes sense to get started with the biggest first, and so the most recent addition to my kit and the new powerhouse lens here is this, the Aperture 600C Pro 2. Now, I've been wanting a bigger light in my kit than the old 300D for a while, and especially with all the narrative stuff I've been playing around with lately, having one massive light has gotten way more important. And also in doc work, I've been wanting a light that can fight the sun a little better for sit-down interviews, so all around it was the right time to bring in something more powerful than what I had. The fact that this is full RGB is pretty neat, but even though I doubt I'm going to use it on full purple very often, it's really helpful to be able to tweak beyond standard bicolor temperatures to match ambient light sources like street lights or whatever. I can blast this guy through the windows to fake sun or moonlight. I can stick it on the lantern attachment and fill up like a whole dark space with it. This one is like, I forget exactly, 25% more powerful than the old model or something crazy. They just keep advancing this technology so fast, but the point is it is really bright. Now, in the past, I've had to rent 600Ds for exactly that kind of situation, like fighting the sun, but the reason I was so interested in this one and bringing it into my kit full time is not just because of how good the light is, it's because of the build quality. If you know me, you probably already know I'm brutally hard on gear, and what I love about this light is the construction materials and the fact that it's weather resistant to the point where I can leave it outside and running in the rain without having to worry about it. That might not be a big sell for everyone, but for me and the kind of work I do, it's a massive bonus and why I got so excited about this when it was announced. It's not a cheap light at around $2,500, but considering what it can do and how long I expect it to last, it seems like a pretty great deal to me. Okay, next up is Old Faithful, my Aperture 300D Mark II. I bought this over 5 years ago now, and it just keeps working, even after I accidentally left it on for like 3 straight weeks when I went on vacation once. Up to this year, it was my main key light for most shoots, and it's done an insanely good job. And actually, for a lot of international stuff where size and weight are serious issues, it's probably still gonna come with me over the 600C2 because it's so much easier to haul around. It's also less than half the price of the Big Brother, and some people out there would probably be better off with 2 of these rather than one massive light like the 600, so don't sleep on these just because they're a bit older. Then moving down in size a little bit, I have also this guy, which is an Amaran 60X, which I got sometime last year, and this is tiny in comparison to the other two. It's really useful as a fill light or an accent light, especially since it's full RGB as well. And if you have full control over the light in its space, you could also easily use this as a key, and it takes all the same softboxes and attachments as every other Aputure light out there. Amaran stuff isn't quite as burly as the Aputure versions, but it's also reflected in the price because I think this only cost me 200 bucks, so less than a tenth of the price of the 600C Pro 2. I definitely wouldn't want to leave this outside in tough weather, but for what I use it for, I absolutely love it. It also weighs nothing compared to the other lights, and it makes it possible to like clamp onto bookshelves or even mount on really basic lighting stands, which in some situations actually makes it more useful than the bigger options. So if you're on a tight budget, but you still want something that'll play nice with the more expensive options down the line, then Amaran gear is an incredible value, and it runs on the same app as all the rest of the Aputure stuff. I'll get this out of the way. I guess I should say that with those three lights, I'm pretty much set for chip-on-board style lights, so that means that I'm going to be giving away some really cool stuff, like these Xi'an Mollus lights. I've got the 100 watt and the 60 watt version here. I'm also going to include the Bowens mount attachment for these, so you can put a standard softbox on them. With these two lights, you can do a ton of stuff. This one can be your key light, this one can be your fill or a hair light maybe, and they run on batteries, which make them really, really handy. I actually called these lights the most interesting lights of 2023, and I do still mean that, but space is at a premium here in Toronto, like in this 8x8 tiny office, and I've just got too much gear. There'll be a link in the description for details on how to enter, so check that out if you need to build up your lighting setup. But I'm kind of having second thoughts as I hold these, so I'm just gonna get rid of these and out of my hand, put them into the giveaway box before I change my mind, because gear hoarding is a real problem. Now, when it comes to modifiers for all of these, I'm again using pretty much all Aputure over here, and over the years I've built up a bunch of options like the Light Dome 2 and the Light Dome Mini and then the lantern attachments. Most of these have been replaced by newer versions, but the stuff I have still works great. Like, I don't know if I have the Mark 1 or which version, but I'm not spending any more money because it already works great and there's no point in replacing it. I also have some really big 6x6 frames and book lights and stuff as well, but this video is going to be focused on the lights themselves, or we'll be here all day. Okay, so next up is a piece of kit I've been lusting after for quite a while now, the Aputure 2-foot Infinibars. Before I got these guys, my main tube lights were the Nanlite Pavo Tube 4-foot lights. They were great for me, and actually they're still sticking around as one of the few non-Aputure things in this kit because they're just so good for the price. But their fatal flaw is the size, because while it's no problem to stick in the car for local gigs, if I want to travel with them, I need a massive case that's just a pain to fly with and barely fits in some rental cars. Now, that's not Nanlite's fault in any way, because they do have smaller versions. That's my problem for picking massive 4-foot lights as a DP who travels constantly, but that's why with the Infinibars I went with the 2-foot version of them. I went with the 4-light version of this kit, which comes in a super burly case and has a bunch of really well thought out accessories. It even has grids and stuff and egg crates, and I got some soft boxes. I also really like that these are square, unlike most tube lights, so I can just set them on shelves and they're not going to roll off and break. They're also incredibly premium feeling, which makes me think they're going to last a very long time, which to me personally is more important than all the CRI values and foot candle ratings. And overall, I'm just really excited to get these out into the world. All right. Okay, so the next thing in my kit this year is a brand new addition, and full transparency here, I got it for free, and it's probably the one thing in this kit that I didn't need. This 8 light MC Pro kit. Now, I'm not saying I didn't need it because I don't use small lights like this, because I use them a ton and I own a bunch of them, including the old non-pro MCs, and I use them all the time. I was always curious about these pro versions, but between all the other small lights I had, I was pretty well covered. The main reason I have this kit is because, like I said, Aputure asked me if I wanted it for free. But this kit is insane if you haven't seen it before. Everything here charges internally. There's an outlet on the side of it. It comes with a ton of really well-made accessories like soft boxes and magnets and clamps and all sorts of stuff. The lights themselves are also built really well, and I can feel the difference between these and my old MC. They're just solid feeling, and they're also incredibly bright. Now, is it likely that I'm going to use all 8 of these at once? No, probably not, just being honest. If Aperture didn't give the whole kit to me, I probably would have stuck with what I had, but that doesn't mean I'm not nerding out hard over this setup. I'm 100% gonna use these a ton, I have no doubt, but these are kind of like a luxury item, and more often than not, I think I'll probably end up taking like 2 or 3 of them on a travel gig with me instead of the whole kit. For local work and commercial stuff though, this is gonna come in really handy, and I definitely don't want to sound unappreciative because it's super cool for Aperture to give this to me. But the good news is this means I now have the ability to give away all my old small lights. Like I've got 2 of these Zhiyun 20Cs, which are kind of like their own version of the Aperture MC Pros. They've got soft boxes and grids and barn doors on them. They're full RGB. Those are great, so they're going in the kit. There's 2 of them. I'll also throw in my original Aperture MC because if I have 8 of them already, what do I need with this one? It's been a great light for me and has come all over the world, and it's gonna make some other filmmaker really happy, I hope. So with all this, we're up to 5 lights total, so definitely check out the giveaway details because this kit should be super useful to a filmmaker who's just building up their lighting package. Now, let's move on to panel lights, which are also incredibly helpful for dock shooters because they're usually a lot lighter than chip-on-board lights. And because they're flexible and flat, you can stick them in places where the bigger lights would never fit. I have 2 different sizes of panels, and when I say panels here, I mean the matte style flexible ones, not the chunkier ones like the Aperture Nova or RE Sky panels. For me, panels are all about flexibility. Sorry, accidental pun, but I do really mean that because they're so flat I can tape them onto windows or curtains or onto the ceiling of cars or just roll them up and stick them on a bookshelf. The first ones I'll mention are these Westcott 1x1s, which are the smallest panels I have and were actually some of the first serious video lights I ever bought. I cannot recommend these enough in terms of build quality. I actually already featured these in a video about the hardest wearing gear I own because at this point I think I've had them for more than 7 years now, and they've traveled all over the world with me and just kept going no matter what abuse I subject them to. I've left them out in the rain, under the baking sun, in the desert for hours. I basically just treated them with total disrespect and they don't quit. I love the form factor. I can fit 2 of these into a single photo backpack, and anything that lasts this long automatically just makes me happy. The downside to these are that they're pretty expensive in today's LED market at nearly $1,000 each for the Cine kit, and they're bicolor rather than full RGB, but because I have a bunch of other RGB lights, it's really not that big of a deal. The real problem for them is that they don't connect to Sidus links, so I can't adjust them remotely, and even though I think it's theoretically possible to get them set up for a remote control via Bluetooth, the couple times I tried to make it work, I struggled. So these sort of live outside my normal lighting ecosystem and really see the most use as a space light when hooked up to the China Cube attachment. They're also my go-tos when I'm under extreme weight or size restrictions, but I still want some sort of lighting capacity. I'll just bring these 2 guys in a backpack and they're way better than nothing at all. But honestly, I likely wouldn't buy these again right now considering they're also sort of the black sheep in my kit, but because they still work amazingly and Aperture/Amran don't make a 1x1 panel, I'm keeping them for now, so I'm sorry, but these are not part of the giveaway. Okay, stepping up from the Westcotts, I have these. I've got 2 of them. These are F22Cs from Amran. I've had these for a while now, I think maybe since early 2023, and they're either better or worse than the Westcotts depending on your needs. They're a lot bigger and heavier, especially in the carrying case, and 2x2 is often a little bit harder to hide in small places than a 1x1, but on the flip side, they are full RGB, a lot more powerful, and they make for a bigger and softer source, and they're still $100 cheaper than the Westcotts. Doesn't necessarily make them better because it's all about what you need for a specific shoot. When I'm free to bring a bit more stuff or I don't have to go too far from the production vehicle, these are fantastic. Plus, sorry to sound like a broken record, but they connect to Sidus Link, which is a big bonus if you have a lot of other Aperture stuff like I do. Now, like I said, Amran typically has a little bit lower build quality than Aperture, but in all the time I've had these, I've never had an issue, especially since they replaced the crappy original mounting mechanism with something that's a lot more solid. All in all, these are fantastic lights that can do a lot. Okay, so that's the 2024 kit, and I'm not gonna pretend it's not a lot of gear. Most filmmakers, especially doc filmmakers, don't need nearly this amount of stuff, and they could probably get by with a single decent key light, a tube or panel or 2, and maybe a couple small fixtures. But for me, who's made 100% of my income with a camera for over a decade now and does a mixture of doc and commercial and increasingly narrative work, it's important to be able to have the right lights for the job. Plus, I can rent these out to productions, which means in the long term, they'll end up making me money as long long as they don't break, which is another reason to go with high quality lights instead of cheap ones. The good news is that means I'm cleaning house and getting rid of all those great lights I talked about, and that means that one of you out there is going to be pretty happy. So just to recap what I'm giving away, it is 5 lights in total, starting with the Mollis 100 as a key, plus I'm adding the Bowens mount attachment, which means you can just pick up a standard softbox and use it as a great key light for interviews. Then there's the Mollis 60 watt, then the 2 Xeon 20Cs, which are essentially their version of the MC Pros. On top of that, I'll toss in my original Aperture MC, which I've used a ton over the years, but for the same reasons, it's just not likely to see much use now, and I want to see it go to a good home. And just to be nice guy, I'm also going to throw in a shape friction arm and a little carrying bag so that you can mount these lights in some weird places. So all in all, a pretty solid 5 light kit for someone, and if you want a chance to win it for yourself, follow the link in the description where you'll just have to tell me in a couple of sentences why these lights would help you out and what you hope to do with them. Then in a couple of weeks, we'll pick someone who's got the most exciting plans for them, and I'll ship them to you anywhere in the world for free. Full disclaimer here, I can't promise your home country won't charge you an import fee, so just bear that in mind if you're entering, because I don't want them to get stuck in customs. I want them to actually get used and not be in a warehouse somewhere because you don't want to pay the bill. Hope that look inside my lighting kit was helpful, and just remember, most people don't need this much gear, and you can do amazing things with way less. I mean, the 5 light kit that I'm giving away for free is more than enough to do some amazing things, so please don't feel like you need to max out your credit cards to have a working kit. Next month, I'm going to be bringing all this stuff out into the field for a more in-depth lighting tutorial, probably around the end of next month, so if you want to see my process in real time and actually using them in the field, keep an eye out for that. See ya.